While after doing a little bit of work to the Johnson back there and getting that old thing fired up, kind of got the sled itch again. So naturally went out and bought another one. Found this little Everest on Marketplace and kind of had to have it. Price was right, and it's pretty much completely trashed, so that was right up my alley. But you know, I think we could do some cool stuff with it. So the plan for this afternoon is to kind of just take a walk around it, check it out, see what it might need. And see if maybe we can get it fired up again. I'm kind of doubting that we're going to be able to get it going today, but you never know. Stranger things have happened, but I guess let's take a closer look at it here and see what we're dealing with, huh? So I guess according to that, we're looking at about 2,300 miles. Not too bad for the year. It's a 1980, and I guess that's assuming that that is correct. I don't know. This is actually a long track model, kinda, anyway. This body style typically had like I think it was a 114 track on it, and this was a 2-up, so it had a 124. It had 10 extra inches of track, but that doesn't really matter for what we're going to do with it. Hint, hint. That is, if everything works out. To be honest with you, I was kind of just after the chassis. I wanted that tunnel, and the engine that's in it isn't a terrible power plant. It's not great, but it's not bad. It just has the little Rotax 503 in it, the air-cooled 500. This one has a single carb setup on it. I think we're going to try and convert that to dual, probably, provided it's not too expensive to do. It's got the option for electric start on it. I don't know if it works or not. I guess we'll have to find out. But yeah, I mean, the suspension and track are in decent shape, so I mean, we could ride it as is for a little while if we want to, but what I'd like to do with this is throw a different skid under it. I don't know if I'll do anything with the front suspension, at least probably not this year, but eventually I would like to do that. Not looking at making like a full-blown mountain sled out of it or anything like that, but I mean, there's some limitations there. Like I said, with the power plant, that 503 I think is only putting out around 40, or not 40 horse, I think 50 horse. I'll have to check that again. I want to say it was right around 50 horsepower, but anyway, I mean, like, you know, a lot of guys are taking old sleds like these and throwing 151 skids on them and stuff like that, and I mean, yeah, it looks really cool, but unless you swap out, you know, what's in there for an engine, I don't think you're really going to be able to turn a 151-inch track with an old air-cooled 500 or even a 540, but that's not to say that you couldn't throw a different liquid-cooled engine in there, something a little bit bigger, maybe a 600 or 700, even, you know, something bigger than that if you really wanted to do the work. But for now, I think we're going to stick with the 500 that's in there, and I've got a line on a 136 skid and a track that would probably be a pretty easy swap. I'd have to change out the drivers. This has the old style cog extroverted drivers on it. I don't know what the correct terminology is for that, but that's what I would call them. But I believe the drive shaft, I want to say they're the same. I'll have to do some measuring on that, but I think a drive shaft out of, like, you know, probably whatever that 136-inch skid came out of, the drive shaft would probably pop out of that sled and go right into this one. I think they're the same. It's going to be that hexagonal drive shaft. I want to say it's like 1.125 inches in diameter or something like that, but we'll have to take a closer look. But anyway, it did come with a seat, but I ripped that off there right away. Wasn't the right seat for it anyway. If I get as far as I want to with this project, I'm going to be fabbing up something there. Something custom for a seat, so I don't know, I might use part of the original seat frame that came in there, because it did still, you know, hook into the bracket on the tank. So we'll have to take a closer look at that when the time comes. But yeah, overall, she's in pretty rough shape. I mean, not terrible, but not great. You know, got dents in the belly pan. Looks like it rubbed up against a tree here or something. There's some rivets popped loose. we'll have to see if we can straighten that out. And I mean, you know, chunks out of the fiberglass in the hood. I've definitely seen better sleds, but I mean, it's mostly complete. I'll have to do some welding on the belly pan and stuff like that. You can see this is actually kind of torn right here, so eventually we'll strip the whole thing down. Anyway, that's kind of the general gist here. Just want to build something that I can take and sort of play around in the powder out here in the fields and stuff like that. Maybe do a little bit of trail riding, but probably just gonna do, you know, your standard ripping through the fields and stuff. And I mean, up here in the northern parts of Wisconsin, we still get pretty decent snowfall each year, so it doesn't take a whole lot to find some powder. And if I have to, I can always head up into the UP. But yeah, so I guess let's get the hood off of this thing and see what kind of mess we're dealing with there. I did take a peek at the wiring harness that's in there, and it looks absolutely atrocious. So I'm expecting some sort of electrical problem. I don't know what, but it looks like, you know, a 5-year-old was released with a pair of scissors in there. So don't know what happened, but I guess we're gonna find out. Yeah, so whatever battery was in here, looks like it was leaking, you know, as most old battery trays are. That one's nice and corroded, so I'm sure it had some acid on it at some point. But yeah, no battery in here. Like I said, single carb setup, but I'm like 99% sure I can convert that to a dual carb if need be. Looks like the recoil has been rewound, or at least re-roped. It's got some sort of like paracord on it that's nice and stretchy, so that sucks. We'll have to rewind that. Doesn't suck, I just don't know why you'd put paracord in there for a recoil. I guess it would work in a pinch, but we'll have to do something with that. And yeah, look at this wiring mess that's in here. What is that? Who did this? This is ridiculous. Like, I'm gonna have to, I guess, just try and find a diagram and then sit down and I guess just trace all these out and see what's there and what's not and what's cut and what I have to splice and repair. But I don't know what the hell all these fuse holders are for. I mean, I don't know what could possibly be fused on here besides like maybe the headlight and tail light. I don't know. That'll be a mess. Those coils don't look great. I think on the newer 503s, yeah, this one is probably still a points ignition. And the newer ones, I know at some point they went over to CDI ignition. I don't know, you might be able to convert the old style points engines over to a CDI ignition. I'm not sure about that, but if I can still get these coils, I'll just buy a pile of those probably, or at least, you know, depending on how expensive they are, I'll at least get 2 of them, if not 4 of them. Always nice to have a couple sitting around as spares, but then again, you know, leaving electrical components like that sitting on a shelf in a garage is always sort of a crapshoot too. You never know how long they're going to last, but yeah, I don't know. We'll have to take a look at those, look at the coils closer there, I guess, and see if we got spark. Well, yeah, I mean, there's not a ton going on in here. You know, it's been a long time since I worked on a sled. I mean, other than that one, which, you know, before I touched that one, I haven't really messed with this sled in probably the better part of 10 years, but you know, there's less going on in here than from, you know, what I remember. But this is looking a little bit easier the more I look at it for what I want to do. I guess let's take a closer look at the engine here. I guess maybe check for spark and maybe we'll think about pulling the carb off or throwing a battery in it and at least checking to see if the electric start works or not. But man, before I get too far with this, I might just take some time here and pull that wiring harness out and just trace it out and see what the hell's going on with that, because that looks like it could be a fairly large headache sooner than later. But yeah, I guess let's just check for spark. We'll start there and then see where we get. Yeah, that's good. That's what you want. Those quick detached spark plug wires. I should mention the engine was not tight. I did pull it over with that janky pull cord. It does roll over. It's a little bit, I don't know, I can't tell if it's the recoil or if the engine was sort of tight, but it pulls over kind of hard. We'll see how it does with the spark plugs out here and see what happens. No idea if this is going to do anything ignition key wise, but I guess we'll turn that into the on position. Got the tether out there. Yeah, and this kill switch on the handlebars seems to be kind of broken, so I just went ahead and unplugged that part from the harness. So we'll see what happens here, see if we get any spark. Saw nothing that time. I'm not seeing anything. This spark plug wire, oh, it's pretty suspect. Let's try it a couple more times. Can't tell. Did you see something that time? I think I saw something that time. Maybe? Yeah, I'm getting weak spark on this side, which is, yeah, this top coil, the spark plug wire that pulled right out of there, so that could be a problem. I wonder what's going on with the bottom one. If we got something similar there. Kind of just surprised, period, that didn't spark at all. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. See something on that side. Not on the right side though. Okay. And must have decent compression because that does pull over a hell of a lot easier with the spark plugs out. Do that one more time. Yeah, okay. Clear spark on the left cylinder, I got nothing on the right cylinder. So, again, I already took a look at the wiring diagram, so I think that would lead me to believe that that coil is probably bad. We can ohm it out and see if the resistance value is the same as that top one, since that top one's working, and if they're similar then it might not be the coil, but I mean, could always be the coil. But those are both fed from one winding on the magneto side of the engine. So I'll have to pull the diagram out and look at that again, but I mean, we can mess with that coil a little bit, see if we can get it to work, I guess. Yeah, those spark plug wires are so questionable too. I don't know, we'll have to do some messing around with that, see what we can get to happen. But I think that's what I'm going to do now, is maybe just pull that coil off there, the one that's not working, check the connections on that. I'll get a meter and check the resistance value on both of those, see what they're at, see if they're similar, and then we'll go from there and see if we can find something. Okay, so I've been messing around with this for a little while and pretty much just proved my theory that the coil was the problem. I took the good coil off the top, moved it down to the bottom, and now I have spark on this cylinder. I'll show you that in a second. And I did take the bad coil off the bottom, moved it to the top position, and tested it that way. Still no spark. So like I said, we're here now with the good coil from the top down at the bottom, and that was just producing spark. I'll rip on the cord here one more time so you guys can see it. I did also ohm those out. The quote-unquote good coil right around 5,000 ohms, and the bad one was like 4,700, so it was a little bit lower. At least I think that's what they were reading. That Harbor Freight meter that I have out here is a piece of crap. I might take them into the house and check them with my good fluke just to make sure, but I mean, bottom line is one produces spark in both positions and the other one doesn't produce spark in either position, so that to me says bad coil. Alright, let's see if we can get her to go here one more time. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, it seems like you really kind of have to rip on the cord to spin the motor over fast enough to make spark, but I don't know if that's signaling a weak ignition coil on the magneto, or if maybe both of these coils, I mean, one is obviously bad, one is going bad. I don't know what value those should read as far as ohms go. I would think 5,000 is pretty decent. I don't know. I'll have to see if I can find that in a manual somewhere, but I mean, that's decent spark. So I think what I'll do is probably go ahead and order up 2 new coils and definitely some spark plug wire and caps, because those are kind of just, they're so loose in the socket they sort of just fall out, so you can see that that's going to be a problem. But I guess I did go and pick up a battery for this, so we could toss that in there and then check compression. I'm kind of curious as to what that's going to be. Hopefully it's good. I'd like to see at least 120 on each cylinder, if not more. But I think 120, 125 would be, you know, that would probably signal a pretty healthy engine. I can double check that, but off the top of my head I think that'd be a good number. So yeah, let's throw a compression gauge on there, throw the battery in there real quick, and we'll see what we get for that. Alright, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the electric start is going to work, and just hope I'm right so I don't have to rip on that janky pull cord to try and get a decent compression reading. But say a quick prayer here and we'll see what we got. Well, that sucks. It's a little bit lower than I would have liked. I'll have to check and see what the compression specs are for this engine. I thought they were a little bit higher than that, and I mean, it could be that this just needs a top end too. I don't know. But you know, they always say it's more important that the sides are even than up where they need to be, I guess. So I don't know if that's true or not. It's just always what I've heard, is that it's more important for your compression to be even from side to side than it is for it to be, you know, up at 120. And this thing has been sitting for a while. I mean, you can see that, so who knows, maybe after we run it for a little while that might come up. It's hard to say. So yeah, that was right around, I guess somewhere around 80. Yeah, I'd say 80, 60, 70, 80. 80 psi. Let's try it one more time. But hey, the electric start works. Yeah, we're topping out at around 80 psi. Alright, well, I guess let's check the other side. Alright, so this is going to be the clutch side. You know, I just realized too, I'm doing this with the throttle closed, and I might get a better, more accurate, or higher reading at full throttle. So I'll zip tie the throttle to the handlebar here, depending on what this reads. I'm kind of hoping it's going to come in around the same thing, and then when we open up the throttle we might get a better reading, but let's see. Alright, so yeah, that's around 80 psi, which makes me feel a little bit better. You know, at least we don't have one side coming in at 40 and the other one coming in at 120. If it's, you know, if it's actually a compression problem, then I mean, both sides are worn out evenly, and I mean, that could be, but I'm starting to think that that's actually kind of more standard. So that might be right around where this engine sits. I don't know, but I think it'll be enough to run it anyway. But let's open up the throttle and try that again, see if we get a better reading. Alright, can you guys still see that? Sure can. Take two. This will be with wide open throttle. See what we get. Alright, that made absolutely no difference. Well, is what it is. I'll have to consult the internet on that one. I don't know if 80 psi is standard, or if it's wore out, or what it is, but I'm guessing, you know, that's probably pretty standard. It is an older engine. It's a 1980, so it's probably lower compression. But, you know, I guess time will tell, and we'll see. And if we have to throw a set of rings in it, I mean, we can do that. Not a big deal, but I'm betting it'll run just fine as is. So, well, I think that's about all I can do for now until I have at least one new coil. So I guess through the magic of YouTube, I'll catch up with you guys after I have some new coils. Well, I'm still waiting on some coils, but I did come across something else the other day. Looky there! Picked up this little SC10-3 out of an 02 Renegade, I think it was. Gonna go back to the guy's house today and pick up the track as well. I don't know why I didn't grab it yesterday. I guess I just kind of wanted to come back and do some measurements and make sure I was going to be happy with a 136 instead of, I originally wanted to go with a 151 like I had said, but I just don't think the little 503 is going to have the snot to turn the 151 the way I would like it to. So we're going to go with a little bit less track, and I mean, you know, it might still have a tough enough time with the 136. This engine's only putting out about 50 horsepower. I don't know, I might waste the time and money upgrading this one a little bit. Otherwise, I'm thinking I'm just going to look for a complete engine out of a Stratus or an Escapade or something like that. The newer version of the 503 with the tuned pipe and the CDI ignition and the dual carb setup, and I think that would get us somewhere around 58 horsepower, which, I don't know, I'll take anything I can get without having to do the work to convert this over to a liquid, at least this year. And I guess in the long run, I kind of want to try to avoid converting it to a liquid, doing all that extra work. It's like at that point, you might as well just go out and buy, like, you know, I don't know, like a 96 through 02 long track sled already, because I mean, those aren't super expensive anymore. They're still, you know, in the $2,000 to $3,000 range around here. And I mean, when this thing's all said and done, I'm thinking I'll probably have about 1,200 bucks into it, so that's not too bad. I mean, we still haven't had the engine running. Who knows what that's going to do. I know the compression was reading kind of low. I'd say that's probably about 2/3 of what it should be. I'd like to see it up in the 130s after, you know, after I went and did a little bit of research there after we checked compression the first time. But I want to blame that Harbor Freight gauge. I don't think that is reading accurately, especially since I got like the exact same reading on both sides. That leads me to believe that that's just a problem with the compression tester. And I did see online that some of those Harbor Freight compression testers are kind of garbage, as you'd expect them to be. But so yeah, I don't know. There is a newer 503 on Marketplace about 10 minutes down the road from my house here. The guy says it's got 165 on both cylinders, and he's got the tuned pipe for it and the dual carbs and everything. So I don't know. We'll see how light the wallet's getting. Maybe we'll go down and pick that up too. But today what we're going to do is try and drop this old skid out of there, get the drive shaft out, and then rip that track out and try and fit the SC10-3 underneath there. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. I think the front will bolt right up into the existing mount for the existing skid down there. And I was reading online, the center to center distance on this skid is supposedly like 24.5 plus or minus an 1/8 inch, which makes zero sense to me, because even at fully compressed, you know, the front arm and rear arm aren't even close to 24 inches. So I don't know if that spec is for a 121 inch skid. I'm gonna have to go back in the house and recheck that, but I think it should be somewhere more in the neighborhood of like 30 some inches. But like I said, we'll have to double check that. I at least want to get this under there and bolt in the front, and then just see about where the rear sits, because we're gonna have to probably fab some brackets, some drop brackets. So there's a couple different things that I'm considering here. This is a 16-inch wide track, so it's a slightly wider tunnel than the sled that the suspension came off of. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to just drill holes in the tunnel and then bolt right into the idler assembly here. I don't know if that's going to fit up underneath the tunnel. And even if it does, I would think I'd still want some sort of reinforcement in there to strengthen that a little bit. So I think we might just fab up some brackets anyway, some drop brackets, and then that's going to pitch the ass end up of this a little bit higher, which until I get the front suspension worked out, that's probably going to suck because we're going to have so much ski pressure that steering it's probably just going to be a pain in the ass. But then again, I wanted to ride this in powder, so who knows. It's a project. We'll figure it out as we go. Hopefully we don't have to drill too many holes in the tunnel. I'm going to measure 10 times before I drill, and hopefully everything will work out. But let's shut the hell up and get to work, shall we? Alright. Alright, I'm going to try and drop these upper idlers out first, and then we'll probably drop the rear and then drop the front. Okay, so got the top idlers out and the rear dropped. I'm going to pull the front next. I'm just thinking about this center to center spacing a little bit more, and everything I'm looking at had to have been for 121-inch skid. I'll have to do a little bit more investigating, but I think the center to center distance for the 136 SC10-3 is going to be somewhere more around 30 inches. But I think what my plan is going to be is to take, so they have the initial whatever you want to call it, mounting brackets riveted to the tunnel right there, those 4 rivets, and those 2 holes down there. There is a third hole that's drilled into the bracket but not through the tunnel. I'm thinking I'm going to be able to use those brackets, but what I want to do is just move them back so that center hole is like the quote-unquote center to center distance from the front mounting, or front arm, I guess, back. Hopefully that makes sense. And then there'll be a hole to the back and to the front that we can make a little bit of adjustments with. But I have to verify that before we go drilling holes, but I guess let's get this dropped the rest of the way. Well, we had to do a little bit of rearranging there and use the old deer hoist to get the rear end up in the air high enough so I can grab that old skid out from underneath there, but now we should have enough clearance to do it. Well, out with the old and in with the new. So we're not gaining a ton of length there, but it is a pretty substantial difference. You know, I think it'll look like a pretty radical change once that new skid is under there. But I don't know, there's a lot of geometry to be figured out yet before we go tossing that in there. But I do have to get the drive shaft out and compare that to the new drive shaft that I picked up yesterday. I'm almost 100% sure it's going to be a direct drop-in, but you know, I'm probably wrong about that. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm going to get the back end of this lowered back down, and we'll get working on taking the chain case apart to get that drive shaft out. Adjustable hammer for the win. Nice. good so far. The deeper I get in here, the more it looks like I'm going to be able to use that drive shaft out of the Renegade with minimal modifications. Alright, we should be at a point where I can get that drive shaft out now, but I'm going to have to lift the back end back up in the air so I can get underneath it and just see what is on the bottom side of the tunnel by the drive shaft there, because it's a little bit snug. It doesn't seem like it wants to move back and forth. I do have the retainer on the opposite side undone already, so I'm not sure what's holding it in there, but we're going to take a look and find out. Alright, well, sorry for the abrupt change in progress there, but so the point that you saw me there laying on the floor, it took me probably another 5 hours to get the track out and get the drive shaft out from its mounts down there. We'll take a look at everything that I did on the bottom side. The skid is definitely not mounted by any means right now. There's a ton more work to be to be done. It's right now just bolted into the front hole right there. I'm either going to have to rob the mounts off of the Renegade that I got this skid from, or if I can find them off of a different ZX chassis or even an S2000, anything would work really. I mean, I could use the old skid mounts that are still on the tunnel. The only problem with that is that you see the holes are actually through the side of the tunnel, and I would like the drop brackets that actually come down below the tunnel to bolt into. And I mean, normally you would need them, you would need the drop brackets to be able to swap this in here, but the Everest skid and track is actually a 16.5-inch track, and so the tunnel is wider. ZX chassis all had, well, except for like the Tundras and Scandics and stuff like that, had 15-inch wide tracks on them. So this being a wider tunnel, the mounts for the rear arm of the skid will actually fit up into the tunnel, so I could use those mounts on a different snowmobile, you know, any other model that obviously doesn't have a wider tunnel. The skid would not fit up into it, and you would need the drop brackets, or you know, at least be able to make your own, use them off of a different snowmobile, whatever. But you need some sort of bracket to be able to mount the skid in there. For us, that's not the case. So I haven't really quite decided what we're going to do there yet. But I'm thinking we're probably going to use the original brackets that are in there, just drill out the rivets and move them back. And you can't really tell it from this angle, but, well, maybe you can, but there is a hell of a rake on this thing right now. So if I leave the ass end up this high, there's going to be so much ski pressure that I think this thing's just going to be a bear to ride. And eventually, I'm probably going to do some sort of front end swap on it. More than likely gonna end up going with like an 80 SA trailing arm setup. off of, if I can get the rest of the Renegade from the guy that I got, all the other parts from. If I can get the whole sled from him yet, I'll probably just use whatever's on there, but not 100% sure what we're going to do there yet. But like I said, I had to cut the old drive shaft out, which is not what I wanted to do, because I wanted to use, the old drive shaft, just press drivers off of a newer drive shaft and just press them back on here, because the axles are, I believe they're the same diameter. Hopefully I'm not speaking too soon on that, and we'll have to, fight to come up with some other sort of setup. But I think eventually what I'm going to do is try and weld this one back up, toss it in the lathe, and smooth it out. But for now, this one was cheap enough on eBay. It was like 40 bucks, which was a steal, because the rest of them, were up around the $80 or $90 range. So I just grabbed that one. And what we'll end up doing is, we'll have to press the drivers off of that yet, and then we're going to take the drivers off of the Renegade drive shaft and then press them onto here. And we'll have to do a little bit of measuring to get them lined up and everything, but it should work out, should work out just fine. Like I said, I'm pretty sure both drive shafts are 1 1/8 inch in diameter, but time will tell. We'll see how that works out. But that will probably all happen in the next video. I think what we're going to do to finish this one off is just get this thing running, because that's what we set out to do at the beginning of the video. So I should mention, it's been about 2 weeks since the last time you guys saw me laying on the ground there underneath the tunnel. And in that time period, I did get the rest of the parts that I need to get this thing running. At least I hope I did, as long as nothing else shows up. As you can see there, I got the new coil packs bolted in place, spark plug wires and caps. That was all pretty easy to do, made for some boring content, so I think we're going to leave that out of this video. But I do have spark on both cylinders now, as we anticipated, so that is good. Have the wrong spark plugs in there at the moment. I think I have some BR9 ESs out of my old jet ski that I had left over that are in there. But I believe this one should have B8 ESs in it, or BR8 ESs in it. I think the manual specs a Bosch plug, because this originally had, everything on here was Bosch for the ignition system, but for what we're doing, there's no reason not to run the NGK equivalents. So I ordered a set of those BR8 ESs, and we'll pop those in here as soon as they get here. But for now, like I said, you have spark on both cylinders. I'm just going to shoot some gas into the carburetor. We'll probably use the electric start to get it spinning fast enough. I have not replaced the recoil yet. Got to do that yet. But yeah, the only thing standing in our way, I think, of getting this thing running is if that compression reading that we saw earlier was accurate. But after doing a little bit of research online, I think that Harbor Freight compression gauge that I have is just garbage. Considering that it read 90 or 85 psi, whatever it was, on both sides, I have to imagine that the actual compression is a lot higher than that. And I was reading something about that gauge. Some of them were made with an actual Schrader valve in the base, and then the other ones just have some sort of a weird ball style check valve, and it sounds like the ones with the check valve are the ones that give incorrect readings and cause problems like that. So from what I said, or I think I mentioned it earlier, for how hard this thing pulls over with the spark plugs in it, I have to imagine the compression's pretty decent. But whatever it actually is, I think it's definitely higher than 85, and we should be able to at least get this thing running with whatever it has for compression. So yeah, I guess without further ado, let me grab my WD-40 can, or the spray bottle that's got mixed gas in it, and we'll see if we can get this thing to light off. Definitely still gonna have to go through this wiring harness. I can't believe this thing actually turns over with the way this looks, but let's see what we can do here. she runs, I'm going to try and bottle feed it here for a while if I can get the timing right. Man, too slow. Well, there you are. That's pretty exciting. So I'm going to go on a limb and say that compression reading was probably wrong. I think it sounds pretty good, actually. I mean, it sounds healthy. Probably wasn't great to be running it with, well, probably doesn't matter too much, honestly. I was going to say it probably wasn't great to be running it with the chain case all open like that, but for 30 seconds, probably wasn't a big deal. So yeah, there you go, 150 bucks, running sled. So I think that's probably going to do it for this video. Set out to get it running, and now she's running. I'm sure this one's getting a touch long anyway, but I think in the next video we're going to go through and replace all the fuel lines. Well, actually, you know what? I think what I should do is probably just focus on getting the suspension swap done and getting that, you know, the drive shafts taken care of and everything like that. And once I have that done, I can worry about everything else going on up here, meaning fuel lines and wiring harness and stuff like that, and dressing up the hood and whatnot. Just because I know that drive shaft situation is probably going to take a little bit of thought and some time to get that all straightened out. And we'll have to do quite a bit of measuring back here to make sure that we get the spacing right for the skid. Like I said, still not 100% sure what we're going to do for the mounting brackets on the back. And we'll probably have to turn down some spacers on the lathe, or turn out some spacers on the lathe, I should say, because like I said earlier, this tunnel is wider than the ZX chassis that skid came out of. So we're going to have to come up with some sort of spacer on each side of the front and rear arm, just to close up the gap that's going to be in there. So we'll see what we can come up with for that. But that should all be in the next video, or next maybe 2 videos. We'll see how it goes. But if you stuck it out this long, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.